we're off-centered. You're on. You're on.
GrandMommy, what happened to Sadie Skunk?
That's right, girls and boys. We were talking last week, and I'm sorry about that we didn't do it on Friday, but we were talking about the boys, Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly's 6th birthday party, remember?
Yeah.
And they were at the birthday party, and they were having such a good time. And they had had their cake and their ice cream, and they were, excuse me, they opened up their presents, and they played all the games that was in Farmer Brown's field, and they were having such a good time. And remember, girls and boys, that they, I'm sorry, would my camera crew get my glass out of the refrigerator, please? It's on the bottom shelf. I'm so sorry, boys and girls, mommies and daddies. Anyway, we were talking about they had opened their presents and they ate their ice cream and their cake. And do anybody remember what kind of ice cream it was? It was called, anybody remember? Neapolitan. And remember, that is the good chocolate and vanilla and strawberry ice cream that's all in the bucket together. You gotta go get to the grocery store and get some. So, if I remember right, Sally Skunk comes over to Mrs. Piggy and she says, Mrs. Piggy, I got a problem. And Mrs. Piggy says, what's the matter, sweetheart? And she said, and she started crying, and Mrs. Piggy says, come here, and she gave Sally Skunk a big hug, and she says, now you tell me what's wrong. And she says, my little baby sister Sadie's missing, and I can't find her anywhere. And Mrs. Piggy says, well, she thought real quick, uh-oh, we got a problem. But she said very sweetly to little Sally Skunk, she says, oh, Sally, I'm sure we can find her right away. So off they go, and they came to Mr. Farmer Brown and Mrs. Farmer Brown, and they were standing there in a field looking very proudly at their field had been converted to a gosh awful birthday party. I mean, it was really, 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 really good. So Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, Mrs. Piggy, how do you like it? Everything turned out good, didn't it? And Mrs. Piggy says, well, it's turned out really good, and the boys are having a good time. However, Sally Skunk has a little problem here, and we need to fix it. And so Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, Sally, what is your problem? And Sally by now, she was crying so bad by now, and she says, Mr. Farmer Brown, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, my sister Sadie, she's only 3 years old, and she was so excited to come to the birthday party, and my mama said I had to take good care of her, and now she's gone on, I don't know where she says, and he goes, there, little Sally Skunk, now slow down. What did you say again now? You just talk so fast. Well, it's like this, Mr. Farmer Brown. I was going down the slide, and I was going down the slide again, and I went down the slide for the 3rd time. Oh, it's so much fun. I love it. I love it. Mr. Farmer Brown says, Sadie, what happened to Sally? Or Sally, what happened to Sadie? And Sally Skunk says, well, then I went to look for Sadie because I told her to stay right down there, and she wasn't there, and I don't know where she's at, and I'm scared. I looked all around, and I'm so scared I don't know where she's at. And Mr. Farmer Brown says, now, that's okay. Now that's okay. And he pats little Sally Skunk on her head, and he says, that's okay, sweetheart. He says, I'll go look around the park. I know I can find her. So, Mrs. Piggy, now you stay with Mrs. Farmer Brown, and you talk together, and I'll find little Sadie. So Mrs. Farmer Brown says, okay, now Sally, you want to stay here with me, don't you? She said, yes, because I'm scared to go out there now by myself because I don't know where Sadie's at, and so I'm going to stay with you, Mrs. Farmer Brown. Can I stay with you, Mrs. Farmer Brown? And you, Mrs. Piggy, please, 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 please. Well, by now, Mrs. Farmer Brown and Mrs. Piggy were getting a little bit tired of poor old Sally going, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so they said, yes, darling, you come and stay with us. So Mr. Farmer Brown goes out in the field. Goes out in the field, and he's looking all around very carefully up underneath the tree and up in the tree because he knew that Sadie Skunk could probably climb a tree. She was 3 years old. I bet she could climb that tree. No, he didn't find. And he didn't want to tell the other boys and girls yet because he didn't want them to be running all over and then some of them would get lost too because his field was real, real big. So he looked around and he looked around and he looked around some more and he went down the slide himself. Didn't even have his swimming trunks on. He went down in his overalls and his shirt and his big floppy hat. He went down the slide.
Is it a water slide?
The water slide. Yes, he still didn't find him. Didn't find Sadie Skunk anywhere. So finally, after about 15 minutes of this, he finally says, I think I better go and find Wiggly, Piglet, and Squiggly and just maybe talk to them. Maybe they have seen I'm sorry, boys and girls. Maybe they have seen Sadie Skunk and, they might know where she's at now. So he walks over and they were playing. And he said, boys, I hate to interrupt your game here. He said, who's winning? And Squiggly says, well, I am, Farmer Brown. And Allie the alligator says, yes, I can't hit one of those balls. I just can't hit them. And Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, I tell you what, I have to talk. It's very, very important. I have to talk to Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly. So you other three boys, you continue on with your game because I have something that Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly has to do. And I'm very sorry to interrupt your game. But Allie, you now have a chance to maybe win this game. And Rocky Raccoon says, oh, no, he's not. I'm going to win this game now that Squiggly's gone. Well, little Lenny Lizard says, can't I have a chance to play? I'm the littlest bun in the bunch here. Can't I please have a chance to play too? And they said, well, of course, now that Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly's gone, because they're so good at this game, we all got a chance to win. So off Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly go with Mr. Farmer Brown. And Piggly says, Mr. Farmer Brown, what's wrong? Why did you call us away from the game? And Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, this is just between the three of us, the four of us, But I need your help. Because I don't know the names of all the boys and girls that's here at your party. And I know their parents, but I don't really know some of their names. And I need you boys to help me do something very important. And so Wiggly says, oh, what's going on? What's going on? What can we do? And Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, Sally Skunk is very, very worried because Sadie Skunk is missing. Missing?
No.
Oh, my gracious sakes. Oh, my gracious sakes, Wiggly says. Oh, Piggly says, oh. And Squiggly says, oh, dear. Mr. Farmer Brown, we need to go in sections. Mr. Farmer Brown says, now, wait a minute, boys. I do not want to be scattered all over this place. I don't want anybody else to get lost. So what we'll do is we'll divide it into half. right there. See that fence post down there that's painted red? That's the halfway mark. So Piggly and I will go on this side here, and Wiggly and Squiggly, you go on this side here. So now we're going to go down. We're going to go straight across to the fence post, and then we'll go down to the end where the next fence is, and we'll come back up, and we'll go back down, and we'll come back up, and we'll go back down, and we'll be at the red post. Now, do you understand that, Wiggly and Squiggly? Okay, Mr. Farmer Brown. So we're going to go down to the gate, right, or to the fence, right? Mr. Farmer, yes, sir. Then we're going to go down to the other fence. That's right. And then we're going to come up, and we're going to go down, and we're going to come up, and we're going to go down, and that'll be the red post. Is that right? That's okay. You are so good. It just reconnected. You are so good, and we will meet you there at the red post. Boys and girls, it's a little bit stormy here where I live, and so sometimes it might go off, but it came right back on, didn't it? So, did it again. So anyway, Mr. Farmer Brown and Piggly start out, and they went up and down and up and down and up and down. And Piggly Wiggly, they started out, and they went up and down and up and down, and they talked to the boys and girls, and they didn't ask anybody if they had seen Sadie, because Mr. Farmer Brown said he did not want everybody to be all upset. So they met at the red post, and Piggly says, "We didn't find Sadie. Wiggly, Squiggly, did you find Sadie?" And Wiggly says, "No, we didn't." And Squiggly says, "I just don't know where Sadie can be." And Mr. Farmer Brown says, "Well, I went down the slide, and I looked into the bouncy house, but I didn't see her anywhere." And Squiggly says, "You know what?" She said, "I heard Sadie Skunk telling her sister Sally how much she liked the bouncy house. Let's go back there just in case." So they go back to the bouncy house, and they looked in. Now, boys and girls, GrandMommy's never been in a bouncy house, and GrandMommy does not tend to ever be in a bouncy house. But I know some boys and girls that have been in bouncy houses, and they like them. Well, this bouncy house, when you went in, it had balls, a million balls, because it was such a big bouncy house. And so you bounced up and down, and then you also bounced into balls, and they were going all over the place, and oh my God. Now don't forget, Sadie Skunk is only 3 years old. So she's only about that tall. She's a little teeny girl. Sometimes, little girls get to be little, and then when they grow up, they get nice and tall and big and pretty. Sometimes little girls are little, itty little, and when they grow up, they're little, itty big little girls. But I digress. So they go over to the bouncy house, and they all looked in. This is a big bouncy house. This is a big bouncy house now. They all looked in, and Farmer Brown says, "Wow, this is going to be a job. Looking in all those balls, looking in through the balls, and, wading through the balls, looking for little Sadie. Gosh." Now, he didn't say this out loud, but he says, if she's been in there too long, she might have kind of passed out, and we may have to take her to the hospital. I hope that's not the truth. I hope that's not right. So, since it was so deep, Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly thought they better not go in, and Farmer Brown says, "No, I don't want you boys to go in. I'm tall, and I'll go in, and I'll just part them like this, and I'll just look like this." So Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly, they sit down at the door so that nobody else could come in, because they didn't want any other little children inside while Farmer Brown was hunting for Sadie. So Farmer Brown, he's going over here in this corner, and he's looking, and he's going in the middle, and he's looking. Oh my gracious, the balls were going everywhere. They were just flying up in the air, and they were going everywhere. Well, he goes some more, and he goes to this corner, and he goes back in the middle again, and he's working his way around, and oh my gosh, he's just parting those balls, and they're still flying up in the air all over the place. And all of a sudden, he looked over in the corner. Oh, my gracious sakes alive.
Is it Sadie?
There sits little Sadie Skunk up in the corner of the bouncy house. And how she got there, she couldn't even remember. He goes over, he bars him up. He said, Sadie Skunk, I've been hunting all over for you. And she said, thank you, Farmer Brown, because I was starting to cry because nobody missed me and I couldn't get across way over there to the door to get back out. He says, well, sweetheart. And he picked her up and he was holding her. And he said, how did you get over here in the first place? And she says, well, I don't know, but the last thing I remember is that I was playing and I wasn't bouncing too much because I knew it was too deep. And so Allie the alligator came in and he went pa-boom. And he just made a dive for the bouncy balls, and all of a sudden the bouncy balls were going, and then I woke up and I'm over here in the corner.
Really?
Mr. Farmer Brown says, oh, be still my heart, be still my heart. What are we going to do with you and Allie the alligator? Well, I don't know because can you get me out of here, Mr. Farmer Brown? And Mr. Farmer Brown says, okay, Sadie, I got you in my arms, so we're going to walk out of here, and we're not going to throw any bouncy balls away. So he goes with one hand, and he parts the ball so he could walk back across to the front opening, the front door. And Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly saw Mr. Farmer Brown coming with Sadie Skunk in his arms, and they said, yay, we found her, we found her, we found her. You notice that they said, we found her, which really was Mr. Farmer Brown. So they leave the bouncy house, and they go back over to where Mrs. Piggy and Mrs. Farmer Brown and Sally Skunk was standing, and Farmer Brown hands Sally, little Sadie, and she says, oh, Mr. Farmer Brown, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Why are you crying, little Sally Skunk? Because I'm happy. Okay, boys and girls, see you Monday.
Bye.
Bye. Hit.